Okay, so now we're going to work on how to partition polygons or shapes. And I've already written out kind of a guideline that we're going to go through. And to remember that partitioning means to divide it into equal parts. Okay, not just any parts. They have to be equal. Okay? So we're going to work on the whole figure, turning it into a half, a third, and a fourth. Okay? Then we're going to work on how to convert it into a fraction. Now remember, when we look at a fraction, the top number is the part shaded, okay, also called the numerator. The bottom part, or the denominator, is the total parts. All right, so we're going to work first with a very basic circle. All right, so obviously we're going to have a whole circle to begin with, right? A whole circle would just be 1, okay? Now if we're working on how to divide it into equal parts, a half means 2, right? A third is going to mean 3, and a fourth is going to mean 4. So if we're working on how to partition a circle into a half, there's there's multiple ways you could do it, and I'll show you the 3. So you could either divide it straight down the middle. Okay, so if we were to fold these, they would be completely even, right? This is 1/2, this is 1/2, okay? You could also divide it that way. Either way, you folded it up and down, the parts would still be equal. Okay, there's still 2 parts. Or you could also divide it diagonally. Now be careful when doing this one. Okay, my 2 parts are still just as equal as the first 2 times I did it. Okay, so I'm just going to do the very basic one and just go straight down the middle. All right, now when we're partitioning this circle into thirds, that means we have to have 3 equal parts. Okay, easiest way to do this is to find the center of your circle and then almost make a Y. Okay. Okay, so that is partitioning a circle into 3. Now let's partition it into fourths. Okay, there's 2 ways, right? We have to have 4, so we have to divide it again. So I'm going to go like that. Okay, now if I want to write this as a fraction, so if I shaded this part, how many parts are shaded in this one? 1. How many total parts are there? 2. So the fraction for this one is 1/2. Okay. Moving on to the thirds. If I shaded this one and left it at that, how many parts are shaded? Just 1 part. How many total parts are there? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now what happens if I shaded in 1 more part? Would the bottom number change? No, because there are still 3 parts. But how many parts are now shaded? Now 2 parts are shaded. So we call this 2/3. Okay? Now moving on to the fourths. How many total parts are there? There are 4 total parts. How many parts are shaded? Well, right now there are 2 parts shaded, right? So we would say this is 2/4. Okay? You can also write your fraction like that. So if I shaded 1 more part, That would make it 3/4, right? So I've only have 4 parts. What happens if I shaded in one more part? That would make it 4/4. Or now I have a complete circle, or we could just call it, we could just say 1, right? Now I'm going to do a rectangle, which is very similar to a square. So I'm not going to do the square and the rectangle. Because if you can do the rectangle, you can do the square. Alright. So I'm going to do my rectangles up and down. Alright. I have one whole rectangle right here. I'm not going to do anything to it. Just I have one whole piece. Now if I were going to make this into halves, I could either do it the same way like I did the circle. Get it like that. I could half it right down the middle, like this. Or I could also diagonal this one as well. Alright, just as long as these two pieces are completely equal. Actually, we'll leave that one. Okay, so if I was wanting to write this into a fraction, how many total parts are there in a half or halves? There are 2. And if I shade in one part, I would say 1/2. Okay, moving on to the thirds. I can partition it. My rectangle not quite straight. Okay. I could have also partitioned it that way. Alright. So for this one, my fraction would be 2/3. So how would I write 2/3? Well, 2 parts are shaded. There are 3 total parts. 2/3. Okay? If I were going to partition this into fourths, okay, just like a window, there are 4 equal parts. If I shade in this, that would make it 1/4. If I shaded in 2 of them, that would also be 2/4. What other word could we call this? We have 2/4 right here, but how much of the rectangle is covered? Think about it. Which other of these words could you use? Right. You could also say 1/2 of it, right? Because now, let's say this is, and let's say I did this one. Are these the same? Yes, right? The same amount of area is shaded. So this one could also be 1/2, but since it has 4 parts, we're going to say it's 2/4. If I colored in one more, it would make it 3/4. Okay? Now what if I gave you the fraction, what if I gave you the fraction 3/4? And I told you that you could do that however you wanted to. Let's just say I chose a rhombus. And how many total parts would there have to be? There would have to be 4 total parts. How many of those parts would I have to shade? 3. Okay, let's try one more. What if I asked you to shade in 1/3? You could choose any shape you wanted. Let's say that you chose a circle. How many total parts does there have to be? 3, right? So I'm going to start in the center so that I make sure that they're all equal. Okay, are there 3 total parts? Correct. How many of those do I have to shade? 1. Don't matter which one. Pick whichever one you want. All right? Good job.